for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair, very much. In 1998, I authored the Children's Online Privacy Protection Act, which is still the only federal privacy legislation to protect young people online. Mr. Medor, in our meeting yesterday, you acknowledged that you were not that familiar with COPPA. If confirmed, can you commit to quickly getting up to speed on that law?
Yes, Senator, I look forward to it.
And if confirmed, will you commit to strictly enforcing the Federal Trade Commission's COPPA rules?
Yes, Senator, I think it's important for the FTC to strictly enforce all the authorities Congress has given it.
Good, thank you. And while the original COPPA has been a major success, it's past time we updated COPPA's protections to account for new predatory practices online. According to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention in 2023, 1 in 4 teenage girls seriously considered suicide, 1 in 8 teenage girls attempted suicide, and 1 in 5 LGBTQ youth high school students attempted suicide. And that's why for over a decade I've been fighting to modernize COPPA to protect teenagers from targeted ads that promote content related to eating disorders, amongst other things. Mr. Medor, do you agree that Congress should protect children and teens' online privacy?
Senator, I think protecting children is one of the most important missions for both the FTC and Congress, and would love to work with your office on that.
And I'm glad to hear that, because we do need to address the pervasive tracking and targeting of young people, and we do need COPPA 2.0 to become the law in the country. Now I want to turn to the baseless claim that big tech has unfairly censored conservatives. Mr. Medor, when we met yesterday, you said that you needed to learn more information about the issue and would follow the facts. But when Chairman Cruz asked earlier this morning whether you agree that, quote, big tech censorship poses the greatest threat to free speech and free and fair elections in this country, you said you agreed. So that answer is inconsistent with our conversation yesterday. So let's be completely clear. Do you believe that big tech has censored conservative speech?
Senator, thank you for that question. So I would make a distinction between sharing the concern about the behavior of big tech and how they conduct their online platforms, and whether or not that conduct amounts to a specific violation of the FTC Act. And so when we were speaking yesterday, that's how I view that discussion, is how would I look at the question of whether any specific action by an online platform violates one of the provisions of the FTC Act. That's something that I don't want to prejudge. I'd have to look at it at a case-by-case basis, comparing the facts to the law. I'm glad that the FTC has taken the first step to start collecting that information so we can assess that important question. But I do share the overarching concern about how content moderation has been implemented by many online platforms.
Well, again, that's not the answer, in my opinion, that you gave to Senator Cruz today. Last week, the Federal Trade Commission began collecting comments on whether the platforms have censored users based on their speech. And this action is clearly designed to intimidate the platforms to adopt speech policies that promote conservatives. Mr. Medor, is it the FTC's responsibility to ensure that the platform's content moderation rules support conservative viewpoints?
Senator, I believe it is the FTC's responsibility solely to enforce the laws that Congress has given it.
Okay, well, many people like myself strongly believe that the platforms did not improperly censor conservatives. In fact, a peer-reviewed study from last year found that while conservatives were suspended more often on Twitter, they were also much more likely to share misinformation. And Madam Chair, I would like to include that study in the record without objection.
Without objection.
Mr. Medor, will you commit to objectively following the facts in any of these conspiratorial fishing expeditions into censorship of conservatives?
Senator, I commit to fairly looking at the facts in every case that would come before me if I'm confirmed as a commissioner.
Well, again, I remain deeply concerned because your comments earlier today suggest that you have already come to a conclusion on this issue. Chairman Ferguson has made similar comments. Mr. Medor, if the FTC Korea staff conclude that no further investigation or enforcement action is warranted against the big tech platforms for supposedly censoring conservatives, will you commit to following that recommendation?
Senator, I can commit to closely examining the evidence collected by staff along with their recommendations and consulting with my fellow commissioners if confirmed to ensure that we're reaching the right decision based on the facts and the law.
Well, that's deeply disappointing because, in my opinion, you know, objectively looking at it, the staff will come to a conclusion that there has been no censorship. But my fear is, of course, is that President Trump is clearly trying to turn the FTC into the Federal Truth Commission, and I think that's going to be very, very damaging to our country. So I'm going to be watching very closely, and I thank you, Mr. Chairman, for this time.
Thank you. Senator Schmidt.
Well, that's interesting because as Attorney General of Missouri, I filed the Missouri versus Biden lawsuit that uncovered the vast censorship enterprise. So the idea that there wasn't censorship is nonsense, total nonsense. We saw the weaponization of the whole of government against